I'd like to welcome everyone to our presentation, Dashboard Confessionals, from Trialing to Implementation During a Pandemic. I'm Courtney Cooney, Electronic Resources Librarian, and here with me is Stephanie Pavlika, Electronic Resources Specialist. We've both been in our roles since late 2019, pre-pandemic. Stephanie started in October 2019, and I started about a month after her. She mostly deals with usage data and is the brains behind the data compilation. I'm mostly the point of contact for the vendors with resource renewals and licensing. But we both kind of dabble in different projects around the library. We work very closely together to manage electronic resources and have been working mostly virtual since March 2020. So a bit about Kettering University. We're located in Flint, Michigan. It just celebrated its centennial of its foundation, and in that time we've had a few name changes, and sometimes it's better known as General Motors Institute, or GMI. It's a private STEM institution offering both undergrad and graduate programs. We're on a term schedule with A and B students rotating between classes and co-ops. Coming in 2022 will be a new Learning Commons where the library will have a new space, and there'll be a need to increase electronic presence and evaluate services for future planning. As you all know, the pandemic began in March 2020, and the Kettering quickly switched to remote learning environment, and the library also shifted to offering many of their services electronically as possible. At the time, we offered a lot of print materials. We offered a lot of materials electronically, but print was still the default purchase option, especially for our course reserves and faculty requests. We knew that this shift would increase our usage of electronic resources, but the extent of that increase was a complete unknown. So here's a quick timeline of the steps we took during those first few months up until the first dashboard release. The time period was fast and furious, with changes that we'll get more into detail about in the next few slides. But at a high level, we started tracking the cost of increased EDA usage. As more adept data was requested, we knew we needed a solution for analyzing. We selected Lim Insight as our dashboard service and started presenting the usage of our services. So back in mid-March 2020, the library closed its doors and we shifted our services online. So this request soon came from leadership to try and track how increased usage would affect the cost of our DDA program and all of our electronic resources overall. Since we didn't have an ERM, and at that point we were not utilizing any dashboard software, we decided to track and analyze the DDA usage in Google Sheets. We chose Google Sheets because we were familiar with it. We could both work on it remotely, and it could be used to display the statistics being requested fairly quickly and easily. And at the time, we didn't know how long this information would need to be provided. Here's an example of one of those initial weekly reports. It included a daily tally, which was reported weekly. It included our discovery system usage, media databases, and only the DDA subset of our electronic books. The focus was on the cost at the time and not true usage info, so the inclusion of just a subset of our resources wasn't an issue, but it also wasn't a complete view because not enough information to make decisions off of. The process of updating the spreadsheet was fully manual, and therefore it was very labor intensive. We supplied this data using the format through April, and when there was an interest from management that shifted to wanting to see how our usage compared to the same time period in 2019. So we were able to pull the 2019 usage stats for the same subset of platforms into Google Sheets, and we built charts into our spreadsheet to better display increased usage. But even though the emphasis transitioned from costs to uses only, the bulk of this process stayed the same. We were still tracking usage using a daily tally and reporting at a weekly level, but due to the speed and manual effort involved, we were still limited to DDA and discovery tracking. In May, we transitioned to collecting and displaying the same info on a monthly basis, and that continued through June. It was during this time period that we seriously began investigating products for creating dashboards that would be easier for us to use in the long term. We considered a couple different dashboard and analysis platforms, but LibInsight seemed to be the best option for us. We were already using SpringShare for LibGuides and LibAnswers and a few other products, and it included the ability to plug into those existing services. For those that utilize LibAnswers, you know that it comes with the Ref Analytics component, and we found out quickly that Ref Analytics didn't communicate with our LibSite in a modifiable way, and it required export, which we do monthly, but first we had to clean up the data, which we'll touch more on a little later. So LibInsight has a few different platform offerings. It has the data set, which allows you to have the data sets both manually and automatically updated. It has the dashboards. You can create custom and shareable ones. You can record data. You have the ability to create forms for direct data input to the data sets. You can analyze with the ability to break down the data into individual graphs. It has the cross data set, which is the ability to compare the data sets. And a big one for us was the sushi harvesting for usage reporting. That makes it a lot easier for electronic resources because you can set up for data to be sent directly to LibInsight from the vendor. So a little bit of background. By the end of June, we knew that we would continue to be primarily virtual library for an undetermined amount of time. And library leadership wanted an analysis of how our services have changed since the beginning of the year. It needed to be simple, shareable, and inclusive of our 4 service areas. In addition, they were looking for a breakdown of in-person versus online usage, if possible. The date range given was winter term to present, and the hypothesis is that the virtual learning environment had an impact on our service delivery, but did it really? The description was to simplify condensed data from each of the areas into one chart. These areas were electronic resources, research and discovery, circulation/access services, and archives and special collections. So we had a planning meeting on July 7th, 2020 to brainstorm the various statistics we were looking to showcase in our VLR and service delivery dashboard. And from there, we created a Google Sheet to help keep track of the data that we uploaded and needed to be uploaded or updated.
Our initial steps were to figure out what data needed to be collected and from where, and then set up our data sets. We wanted to try and create them so that updates would be quick and easy. We wanted to be sure to include the most salient data points for each service area, and that required manually pulling in data from a variety of sources. For our research and discovery area, that included manually entered Google Sheets that documented our instruction sessions, the traffic data from our institutional repository, our discovery usage downloaded from the vendor, and automated feeds for our LibGuides and ticketing system. For access services, that included our checkout reports from the catalog, the daily gate count stats from our door counter, and interlibrary loan requests, which were being manually recorded in a Google Sheet as well. For electronic resources, we need to include the sushi harvesting of the 3 Counter 5 master reports, 5 kinds of Counter 4 reports, some of which were also sushi harvested, while others were being manually downloaded from the vendor or were being requested via email. We also had various non-counter usage formats that needed to be translated into counterfeit terms, such as from our streaming video and other media sites. For our archives and special collections area, we only had a Google Sheet document that was being used to manually record events and other patron interactions. So during our initial setup, we did run into a few issues that we needed to resolve so that we could create the dashboard. The first was learning the system and its limitations. We had wanted to display a single chart for each service area by pulling in data from each of the various data sets that was related to it. But we found that in the setup, LibInsight only allows a chart on a dashboard to be created using a single data set. To combat this, we manually created a summary data set to run the chart off of that is a monthly count of the important data points for each service area. We ran into a similar issue with our usage data, in particular for our electronic resources. For those of you who are familiar with counter reporting, you know that there is a transition underway from release 4 to release 5 reporting. And that means that our usage at the time of the setup and now still is split up between 5 different data sets with differences in data points across them. We also have some platforms that do not allow us to download nor harvest our usage and must be requested via email. We now request that usage each quarter, and our vendor contacts are fairly quick to provide it since they know what we're looking for. Our initial release included all the different data points summed up as much as possible, and as we progressed, the formatting and process for displaying those usage stats has also changed. As we finalized the setup of our initial data sets for this first version of the VLR, we wanted to give a little behind-the-scenes view into the way LibInsight can be used to record, display, and analyze the data. So this is one example. This is from our Access Services summary data set. On the left is the data entry screen for creating a record for that data set. As you can see, we started fairly simply with just a category, a subcategory, and a count for each month. Data could be manually entered on the UI like this, or via file upload for each of those data sets. On the right, you'll see how this kind of custom data set is reflected in LibInsight's Analyze page. And then on the bottom bar there, we have the Analyze options that are available for any data set. So here are some approximations of our first virtual library dashboard charts. They're at their most basic versions. We didn't include any explanations nor definitions for any of the charts or data points. At that point in time, our reference count actually included all tickets for all service areas. So we soon learned that we needed to figure out a different way to collect that stat to correctly attribute the tickets to the appropriate service area. We also included a year-to-date count of requests that totaled all the data points for each service area, but without the context around that stat, it was not very helpful. And we also didn't have a good way to determine a count of in-person versus virtual transactions at that time, which was one of the requested items. So we knew we'd have to figure out a way to provide that as we progressed. So our first release of the dashboard was met with a lot of enthusiasm and congratulations as it was shared with the university leadership. But since we were planning a monthly release at the time, we had to immediately pivot into making improvements for the next release.
So after we got everything set up, we reviewed the data and the process. We found that certain data points could be further broken down into the various service areas, such as ref analytics, which was originally being recorded all in the reference data set, even though it included other service areas. So that data had to be all exported out into an Excel sheet and manually reviewed in the ticket details for reassignment to the correct area. Previously, any changes made to the field of ref analytics deleted any previously entered data. So over time, the data had been skewed. So going forward, after our cleanup process, we started doing monthly exports of the ref analytics data and reviewing for any additional field ads at that time. Very recently, SpringShare made an update to their Ref Analytics platform and fixed that glitch on the field changes. And we were really excited about that. When uploading data with Excel sheets in the Lib Insight form, it's also important to review the data sets after upload. We check for errors and for duplicates as well. Also, with the later dashboard releases, we started adding release notes that outline some of the changes we made and outliers from release to release, such as the change from counter 4 to counter 5 usage over time. We further refined the process over time and after each release. We added a usage calculator process, which streamlined a process to auto-calculate our combined usage across the data sets. This allowed easier data input. We converted the data set types from text to category to count-based, which sped up the process of compiling for quicker dashboard release. We consolidated data sources. Beforehand, certain data sets were being recorded by staff into Google Sheets. So to further streamline and diminish manual uploads, we had the following areas utilize Lib Insight form system, ILL, archives, and special collections, and instruction. We also standardized the ticket reporting. We combined certain metrics such as the FAQ and patron requests. So as previously mentioned, when we first started, data was being input into all these various platforms such as Google Sheets, Ref Analytics, etc. So we wanted the staff training has been ongoing since initial data setup. We worked with each staff member and department on their workflow and to see if the Lib Insight forms could be useful for their respective service areas and cut down on manual upload. We offered virtual training via Google Meet, which included video conferencing for each staff member. We also created a Google Docs of adding data to Ref Analytics that outlined the steps that staff would take when closing tickets in Lib Answers. This allowed for easier export to Lib Insight. It included topics such as if tickets with multiple requests should be entered separately, and an explanation of each field. We also provided links to staff from SpringShare. They have some really helpful FAQs and videos, and they were helpful for us and the staff to learn the Lib Insight platform. So after we planned the setup, reviewed the data, refined, met, trained with staff, this is the current state of the VLR service and delivery dashboard.
So now we've published 4 releases of the dashboard, and in each release we did things a little different. After the first release, we tried to move forward with a monthly update, but we found that unsustainable since a number of our platforms didn't allow for that quick data retrieval. So we've transitioned to quarterly updates. By the Q3 release, we were able to incorporate the counts for in-person versus virtual transactions with patrons, and added a link to release notes to allow interested viewers more insight to the data. We also developed a method for exporting our ticket data from Ref Analytics by service area, which allowed their inclusion in the dashboard as the patron interaction staff for each area. By the Q4 release, we had converted our data sets to count types were available and had made a lot of changes to Lib Answers and Ref Analytics to make the tracking of ticket data more consistent and accurate. By Q1 of 2021, we've included initial ticket data from our brand new ILL queue, and that has included terminology changes for a number of our stats as well to make the charts easier to understand for non-library workers. It's been over a year since the beginning of our remote service offerings and nearly as long since we started implementing the VLR dashboard. And though we've figured out ways to better manage, analyze, and share our data, we're still learning tricks to improve the process. So here are some examples from the Q4 2020 dashboard to kind of show you the changes we've made. Compared to the first iteration from July 2020, the main visual improvements include an added header that includes the link to the release notes document, the removal of the generic year-to-date count, but in turn, the addition of the year-to-date virtual and in-person counts, the addition of summaries for each chart's content, a lot of improved formatting just to make it a little more eye-catching. We've gone through and refined a lot of the data points as well. We can also take a quick look at the Q1 2021 dashboard as well. So this is the live environment of that dashboard. You can see we have it updated, so it's specifically 2021, so it's just capturing the first 3 months. Some of the nice things about this in the live version that you can't see from the slides is that when you hover on the data points, that you can get the little pop-up giving you the actual stats. You can hide certain data sets if you want to see comparisons of certain categories. And it'll also allow you to see it, it'll reformat to suit the size of the screen you're on, which is also really nice. Again, here's a look at some of the back-end data and how the changes we've made have improved the process of getting the dashboard published quickly and easily. So these are two of our research and discovery data sets. The left is our monthly count of reference requests by source, and the right is our full summary data set for the whole research and discovery service area. Since we changed from a custom to a count data set, this gives us a column for each month where we can plug in the counts of each type of transaction, and it allows for quicker updates. We've also incorporated calculated fields that will auto-populate based on the other fields. You can see those grayed out there. They've been added for each of our data sets in a number of ways. They're a huge help as it allows us to just plug in counts from our sources and then grab those sums to populate in the summary data set. It's removed the need for us to do some manual math and also reduce the possibility of human error on those. So we've shown you a couple of examples, but we wanted to try and give you some insight into the breadth of data we're dealing with. Our 4 dashboard charts are in turn being pulled from 4 summary data sets. And those 4 summary data sets are being fed from 26 separate data sets. We're getting the data in those sets from a variety of methods. 5 are automatically fed to LibInsight, 10 are uploaded from other systems, 11 are calculated using the raw data from the other sets, 3 are hybrids, and 1 is directly data entered. Across those 30 data sets, we're also fetching or downloading our data from 53 different sources, 44 of which are external electronic resource vendors. And from those 44 vendors, we're pulling in 103 different electronic resource reports. So we're dealing with a lot of data and condensing it down just into showing that data in those 4 simple, easily readable charts as we were asked to do. So now that we've been through almost a full year, we've had some time to think about the future of the VLR service and delivery dashboard and what we'd like to do in the future.
So service evaluation is ongoing. It takes time to gather data, and some of the data may be used to adjust services, such as hours of operation. We have a new Learning Commons coming in 2022, and will require us to look closely at some of the services we offer and the times that patrons are utilizing those. Our 2021 plans. We archived the 2020 dashboard. This is important to show how services have adapted over time. And the LibInsight platform allows each dashboard to have its own special URL, which is really nice. We want to create some detailed dashboards for internal purposes that further break down some of those service areas. We would like to look more into infographics, geared more towards students and more easily shared on social media. Within the next year, we'd also like to be getting an ERM, electronic resource management system, which may come with its own dashboard component. So we would like to thank everyone for watching our presentation, and we hope that it'll aid you in making dashboard decisions. And we just wanted to post our contact information in case anyone has any questions. We will be holding a live Q&A after the presentation, so please check your conference schedule for the exact day and time, but feel to reach out at any time if you have any questions or concerns. Thank you.
Thank you.